The new Alienware 16 Area-51 has a better OLED screen, but we still don't recommend it. It's huge and heavy. Even with that, its thermals leave a lot to be desired, it doesn't perform the best in its class, and it costs an arm and a leg. Most people should just buy the Legion Pro 7i. Video done. No. In all seriousness, we were excited to get in this updated Alienware. It is their top-of-the-line, most premium gaming laptop. It has the OLED display that everyone's been asking for, and Intel's new Arrow Lake HX refresh CPU, which no one has been asking for. What's annoying is that they've taken all the good features like the mechanical keyboard and OLED screen and put them in this new version exclusively. It doesn't perform that much better, and you have to pay at least $600 more for it. I was the first person to test this laptop, and boy does it get loud. Not only that, but its fan noise is a little high-pitched and annoying. Normally we run all of our tests on the highest performance mode that the manufacturer offers. In the case of Alienware, that would be Overdrive. But in this case, there is a conundrum. Overdrive performs the best, but it also maxes out the fans completely, even when you're doing nothing. So, we don't recommend running it in that mode unless you use headphones or something. Performance mode does a much better job of staying quieter during light use and then ramping up the fans when needed. You'll notice here in our Forza Gaming breakdown that performance mode can give you up to 95% of the performance of Overdrive for over 30 watts less power draw and a 12% reduction in fan noise. But, unfortunately, the laptop gets very warm in that mode, particularly around the WASD keys where your hands are. You have to pick your poison with this laptop. So, in all the graphs we'll be showing you today, we are going to show you the highest mode labeled O for Overdrive, and performance marked as P. Now that we've covered the performance modes, let's talk about this refresh CPU from Intel, the Ultra 9 290HX Plus, which is a solid CPU to be fair, but as we said earlier, the new Area-51 underperforms the Legion Pro with the same chip. It also doesn't do much better than last year's. You might be wondering why a MacBook is on our graphs at all, but that's because a lot of creators like video editors can use either a Mac or a PC, so it's good to see what you can get in this price range on the Apple side of things. The M5 Max 18-core chip rises above all of its competitors in single and multi-core. Moving over to Cinebench, things even out a bit more. The Mac still wins out, especially in single-core, but in multi-core, the new Legion Pro 7i gets very close with the new Alienware right behind in its highest mode. In its performance mode, we only see about a 5% drop. In both modes, it stays ahead of AMD's competing chip, the Ryzen 9 9955HX3D, which was marketed as a cut-down desktop chip from their recent Zen 5 lineup. But Intel seems to be overtaking them in the laptop space right now. These new Intel HX chips do draw more power than AMD's, though, by about 17% for only a 7% gain in performance. Now, where things get a bit muddied is when we look at heat and fan noise again for CPU tasks only. You can already start to see that the Alienware either gets quite warm in its performance mode or ridiculously loud in its overdrive mode. Keyboard deck temps are somewhere the Macs tend to struggle too, but there is more wiggle room there to manually adjust the fans to run faster, since Apple keeps them pretty quiet by default. For graphics performance, this new Alienware has the same 5080 as the one from last year. They're both fed the same max wattage, so we were surprised to see the new one do a little better in a pure GPU test like ray tracing. In TimeSpy, you can see a decent breakdown of how the CPU and GPU are performing separately. You'll notice the difference between performance and overdrive mode in this new one is extremely small, less than 3%. In overdrive mode, there isn't much of a performance jump from the older model to this new one either. Now, let's take a look at actual gaming, because the results are pretty interesting. Starting with Cyberpunk, upscaling set to balanced and frame gen off. The new Alienware performs around the same as last year's. As I mentioned earlier, if you run it on performance mode, it's worse, but not by a huge gap. The 1% lows are very solid here, and they don't change across generations or modes. When we turn frame gen on, all laptops get a big boost in average FPS, but 1% lows suffer. Oddly enough, they are a bit better in performance mode than overdrive on the new one. You'll also see a bit of a gap here between generations of the Area-51s, which means there could be some optimizations on Intel's new chip that help with frame gen. Moving over to Forza Horizon 5, where we don't use any upscaling or frame gen, the new Alienware ties with the Legion Pro 7i for average FPS, but not in terms of 1% lows, which are worse. By the way, in our next review, we will be showing you results from the new Forza Horizon 6. Lastly, we'll look at Marvel Rivals, which is our most modern benchmark. In this game, the results are about the same as the rest. The Legion with the same GPU is ahead, and the Alienwares perform about the same in average FPS, whether you get this year's or last year's, and regardless of the mode you're running it on. In both the Alienware and the Legion with the new 290HX Plus chip, we're seeing improvements to thermals, which may come down to the new CPU, but we aren't entirely sure. Heat and fan noise, as I said, is still the Achilles heel of these Alienware 16s. When it gets warm, it does heat up in places where your hands will likely be, such as the WASD keys. When comparing their highest modes, the Legion Pro 7i might look similarly warm in our graphs, but its heat isn't as poorly placed. It's mostly centered near the top. In fact, when you factor in that our 2026 Legion Pro 7i has a more powerful 5090 in it, that amplifies how much better its cooling is. Let's now talk about how well the new Alienware does in creator workloads, which is somewhat mixed. When looking at video editing benchmarks like Puget, which tests common tasks in Premiere Pro, last year's model basically ties with the new one. The story is similar in DaVinci Resolve, which is another video editing benchmark. In Photoshop, however, the better CPU clearly helps the new Alienware pull ahead by about 12%. When we look at our real-world tests, it depends on the task. First, we measure how long it takes for a laptop to render one of our videos in Premiere Pro. The new CPU seems to be helping a little bit here because this new Alienware was about 13% faster than the old one, even in performance mode. When we check out 3D rendering and Blender, the Alienwares are back to mostly tying. Battery life has gone from awful to horrendous on the new Area-51. Gaming laptops almost always fall behind something like a MacBook, which has a much more efficient processor, but this Alienware is horrible here, even compared to other gaming laptops. It gets less than half as much battery life as the Legion Pro 7i with the same processor and the Strix G16 with AMD. The difference might come down to whether or not the laptop allows you to disable the GPU when you unplug it to conserve the battery. The Alienwares do not have such a setting, while both Asus and Lenovo do. Unfortunately, between this abysmal battery life and its hefty size and weight, the Area-51 is not very good at being a laptop. Now that we've gone over the performance differences between generations, we'll go over the new screen, which does look good and has visibly better colors. It's still a 2560 by 1600 and refreshes at up to 240 Hz, but it is now an OLED panel. It has an anti-glare coating, which prevents reflections more than a regular glossy OLED like the Legion Pro 7i's, but there are still some reflections in brighter environments. On the other hand, there is a sacrifice. The coating makes the screen look a little less vibrant than other OLEDs we've seen. There is a bit of a washed-out quality you don't normally get on an OLED. Overall, the screen is somewhere in between the vibrant Legion Pro 7i's OLED display and the older Alienware's matte IPS panel. Another thing to note is that this new OLED panel only reaches around 400 nits of brightness rather than 600 of the prior IPS panel. Overall, both look good. I just don't want people paying way more for a screen that is only slightly better. Rounding out the rest of the Alienware Area-51s in case you haven't seen our prior video on them. They are extremely well built and look unique. They have soft RGB lighting at the back of the chassis, which is less overbearing than other LED setups. They have full-size SD card readers, Thunderbolt 5 on some configurations, Wi-Fi 7, and upgradable storage with an extra slot. For comfort, they have a soft edge at the front of the laptop, which makes using them more comfortable than similarly thick laptops. Those can bite into your wrists. These also have a fantastic mechanical keyboard option, but unfortunately, it's now only available with the OLED version and the new CPU. Overall, this new Alienware with OLED and the updated Intel chip is slightly better than last year's model, but we don't think it's worth its massive increase in price. And we feel the Legion Pro 7i is a better laptop to get, or Asus's Strix G16. If you love the Alienware brand, though, we think the Alienware Area-51 18-inch is a much better one to get. It feels much cooler to the touch in real-world use, and since they're both so big and heavy, they probably aren't leaving your desk often anyway. So, you may as well get the better Alienware. Tony uses it every day to edit our videos. You may have noticed it mentioned in the end screens. If you do want either of them, or any gaming laptop for that matter, make sure to check out our website, bestlaptop.deals. Over there, we list all the gaming laptops we recommend, including the pros and cons of each. We also track prices right across retailers, so you can catch a good sale. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will catch you later.